Can you hear me now?
Hey, welcome everyone. I'm sporting a new style here. I am keeping it jaunty. All right. We are going to be introducing a few different new trends for this episode of Effluvium. We are at episode number 9, I think. If somebody is a diehard fan, they can correct me. And I'm going to be bringing in a new wonderful friend of mine. Her name is Dana of Nose Nose. And I'm going to allow her to introduce herself because I think she'd be more than apt than anyone to describe her mission. She's wonderful. We're going to have an excellent conversation. Without further ado, I'm going to bring Dana in. And it will be just a moment. I just sent an invitation.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. Can you hear me now?
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening.
Yeah.
Relevant time sort of thing.
It's very early over here. I mean, very early. It's 9 o'clock in the morning. I'm on Pacific time, and I want to hear from you if you can hear me properly. Is there any echo? Everybody needs to know that I'm also transmitting on my YouTube channel. And so there might be some issues with audio because I've never done this before. You professionals.
So for my end data, everything sounds copacetic. I don't hear any feedback, any sort of audio glitches. Anyone who does hear anything that's unusual, just leave a comment. So today we are going to discuss a few different things. We are going to go over, for example, the age of conspicuous consumption in fragrance that has not seen the heights that we see lately. And I like to call it, and I don't know if I read this somewhere and then just subconsciously just adopted it as my own thing, or I made it up myself, but somehow, someday, somewhere I decided to call it Prestige. The idea of a niche that shows upward mobility and shows luxury, and that really essentially the equation of quality as luxury. So we're going to be discussing that. We're going to be discussing a few other things that are going about in the fragrance community, observations we've made about ourselves, self-reflection, and reflection of other things, observations. So thank you, everybody, for joining. We have 19 people who are currently viewing. And if you do have any questions, please hit the question bubble on my end, or if you have questions for Dana or I, you can ask through her live stream through YouTube. So we'll get started. How are you doing, Dana?
Everything is fine. I figured out finally where the echo is coming from, even though I do have one still in my headphones. To answer your question earlier, because I don't think, or I'm not presuming to think that everybody knows who I am. I am like you. I'm just somebody who's very passionate about perfumery and fragrance in general. But my special interest lies at the intersection of how humans see, understand, feel, and use fragrance or smell, because it's not always pleasant, right? And it's not always industrialized and fabricated. Sometimes it's personal. And I'll give you examples of that later. And how we are as people. So somewhere between anthropology, sociology, a little bit of history, because you can't do without, and neurosciences. I am not a neuroscientist, but I do have a background in biology and chemistry. So what I'm trying to do is look at the role of smell in humanity. That sounds very grand. Now, as such, I do a lot of amateur documentary work, and I've been writing a lot in different places, talking to different people. I also review, and I also maintain what is probably the largest Romanian language community in the world at this point. And when I say community, I mean combined groups from what we do on Insta, what we do on YouTube. I have a website with long form articles, research articles, and so on and so forth. So I used to be very active, then COVID hit. And I think that ties into the prestige you're talking about, because I think COVID changed a lot of things in a lot of people, and it changed communities at large. We keep talking about fragcom in a lot of different ways. People use it sometimes in a derogatory manner because it's not pretty sometimes. It's also very heavily dominated by balls, and that's the first thing that I can't believe I'm starting my call with that. But yes, balls and ball energy and big dick energy is something that people don't expect from a fragrance community.
Yes. How low do they hang?
Sorry?
How low do they hang?
How low do they hang? How forward do they point? I don't know.
Yes.
I'm forward thinking, like nothing hangs on this body yet. But no, it's interesting because what makes a luxury category niche or prestige or anything else goes back to the communication function of anything we do, right? Because fragrance has a function, or it has several functions actually. Some people just like a smell. I have a fragrance here or something here, a bag of paint, whatever it is. Don't do that, kids. Don't try it at home. You have it in somewhere in you that you like that particular smell. So you procure the smell or you try to smell the smell because you like it. I like it, and that's it. But then, besides this very self-satisfactory function, smell can have other functions. And I say smell because it's not always related to fragrance, like I said. Sometimes we wear fragrance because somebody else likes it. We know the guy likes this and that. So we're going to put this and that no matter what. We're going to get the guy because this and that is what they like. We're going to smell it. We start to associate with it, and that's it. Sometimes we wear smells to cover other smells, as it has been the case in history forever, from the big plagues till body odors and fleas, and we all know the court of Ludwig XIV and so on and so forth. People still wear fragrance to cover their body odor instead of washing, or because they have some particularity with body odor, right? Great. But most times, I think smell is part of meta language. It's part of the other things we do to communicate things about ourselves, because we always like to talk about ourselves. We all do. I do. You do. That's how we relate. You first learn to project, and then you first to listen, and then you learn to listen. Right. It's early. I don't have my coffee. English is not my native language. Be patient. So what I'm trying to say is, smell is a way of communication, and if it is a way of communication, what is it that we're trying to communicate? When you put a fragrance on, let's just talk about fragrance, nothing else, right? What are you trying to communicate? You might try to say something about yourself, like a descriptor. I'm a romantic person. I'm a strong person. I'm an edgy person. Look at me, how edgy I am, You can try to say you're a safe person, you're a professional person. In an office environment, you wear a professional fragrance because you are a professional. You're trying to define descriptors about yourself so you don't have to say it out loud, right? The same way we do with clothes, maybe,
right,
and other things. You can also try to convey that you're higher in the pecking order, whatever that is. And I think this is interesting. Oh, let me say hi to my folks, too, who are here to hear us. Oh, Ashfaq, yes! Dude, sorry. We have a very interesting gentleman who is very, very far away. I think he's in Bangladesh, if I'm not mistaken. And you, Mr. Ashfaq, are the reason for which we set this live at 9 in the morning. Remember I was telling you that there's some viewers who come from very far away and 12 o'clock is not an option for them? Yes! Okay. Veronica Fader, hello. No, okay. Narcisa, Julia, welcome everyone. If you have questions, you can drop them in here. I will convey them to Mr. JJ right here. And Rich Mitch says there's a terrible reverb. Let me try another thing. How about now? There's a terrible reverb still. Even worse.
Oh, no.
Okay. I'm gonna do this. Is it still there?
Well, rest assured, Dana, at least on my end, there's no interference. It might have to do with just the live stream itself.
Okay. Rich says it's worse. I stay awake until 4 or 5 a.m. Dana, no, you don't. It's because I'm there. You stay awake because I'm there. Not making me feel bad. Okay. This is better. Dan from Romania. Hello, everyone. Robert, long time no see. All right. So we were talking about pecking orders, right?
Pecking orders, yes.
Pecking orders of being one of the things. Okay. How about now? We are sentient. I love that. Turn down the audio on your laptop. Is it better? Well, if it's turned down, I can't hear you people. See? Okay. Pecking order. And pecking order is an interesting thing because when we say order, we talk about a system in which people measure against each other using certain criteria, right? I might not be in the same order as you. It's just not my thing. I don't care how good a gamer you are because I'm not in that world, right? That's not my order. However, we live in a society where we don't wear our orders right here, luckily. We live in a society where we are forced to interfere orders, to overlap orders, and most of us are part of more than one order anyway. So it's a very confusing thing when fragrance becomes a label for something that somebody else might not be part of. It's kind of useless if you don't know who else is in that order. So I think that's where the Facebook communities come into play, because that's where you see exactly who's into what. That's who you see exactly who's using the fragrance to show how rich they are, how big dick they are, or how, fertile reproductive goddess they are, or whatever it is. You go by whatever the order and the rules of that game are. It can be about, just like with cars, just like with anything else. Prestige falls here, in my opinion, which is interesting because it's all about marking territory. It's like animals, right? We're not picking corners. We're just like spray with abandon and hope that somebody's going to pick up the signs that are space.
Lots of spraying. Lots of spraying to the point of overspraying to really.
People are starting to brag about how much they spray, and I'm like, what they don't think about, and that's my only problem with overspraying. Overspraying is not bad per se,
right?
But what they don't think about is that when that animal pees on that corner, or secretes something, or sprays something, or rubs something against something to mark a territory, that's not just for attracting a mate. That's also for repelling everybody else. I mean, it's nature. I'm not making shit up, right? This is how it works.
No, it really is true. For the most part, it is. There are different functions among a lot of mammals to leave their odor to mark their territory. So it becomes this territorial thing that I am asserting my dominance in this space, and you need to yield to that. And this is, yes, it feels like
so it has a repelling function, just like bright colors. Everybody's like, women are like those very poisonous things in nature that have bright colors. Yeah, they are. We're trying to repel the wrong people.
Yeah.
If you're repelled by my makeup because I'm wearing too much, or my sparkly colors or whatever, that means you're not the person for me. So it does its job. But people forget this repelling function of smells, of looks, and so on and so forth. It's like, it's bad. They don't think about it. And that is one of the effects of overspraying, in my opinion, because one, socially, it invites for really loud dialogue. And I'm a loud person, but a loud dialogue is different than a force of opinion. A loud dialogue, in my opinion, is more like a monologue, done loudly to assert, again, to mark a territory in which conceptually you can't enter. You can't go and say, I have a different opinion. Because if you do, you get pushed out. That's not a dialogue. So loudness in any direction invites for firmness of boundaries, not even boundaries, firmness of political space almost. Because you declare something, and if it's not the way you want it, it's war. I think it's a very far-fetched conclusion to draw at 9 in the morning without coffee about fragrance and a luxury item. But sometimes I feel like everything we do has an impact, a long-term impact, even though we don't.
Yeah.
So
I don't think it's far-fetched at all, Dana. I mean, I think that the intention of asserting one's confidence, whatever that might be in the, the eye of the beholder, through application of a lot of fragrance, it has its ramifications. It really does. It's we could think about like mindfulness, to be mindful that not only is this a source of that person's enjoyment, taking in consideration what it does with those around them. Like the big thing that I always mention when people argue that, you really need to be an oversprayer because that's how, the fragrance is going. Huh?
That's how what? That's my question. What do they say it achieves?
They seem to, I hear a number of different things, but they don't really have a lot of validity to them. Like, if you really want this fragrance to perform, then you need to over apply. But the first thing I think of was that the intention of the perfumer or the product, was it intended to be over applied? But the nature of the fragrance doesn't necessarily mean that it was meant to be sprayed 20 to 30 times on one's body. And then also there's the argument of getting attention and getting validation. People will notice you more if you spray more. But is that going to be the kind of attention that is favorable attention? Or are you going to get the attention of somebody who may have an asthmatic condition, who says that this is affecting my breathing? And what do you do in that situation? And I think that that's conveniently omitted from the dialogue, like where you're doing this, with what type of fragrance.
Well, that's the thing, because we're going back to the idea of dialogue, right? Which communication is supposed to be. Now, right. If you're not, oh my God, there's a reverb again.
Oh, crap.
Okay, I'm going to keep trying. We are Sentient is trying to help me by giving me some things. If it gets really unbearable, please let me know and I'll switch again. How do you hear it right now?
So it is wonderful on the end of Instagram.
Okay. So the issue is everything else. All right. So we're going back to this idea of monologue versus dialogue. The moment you overspray something to annihilate everything else around you, to kill the canary, to baffle her until her panties drop and all that crap, then you're not inviting any type of communication back. Because, see, that's the thing. You're trying to communicate something. You're trying to project something. You're trying to tell other people something else. Usually that means you expect those people to know how to collect the information you're giving them, interpret it, and draw the right conclusions for you. You're assuming that they know how to, and they want to hear that communication, right?
Mm-hmm.
In other words, nobody's doing it just for themselves. Nobody's just declaring something. Everybody's expecting that everybody else who is seeing, hearing, and perceiving whatever signals they're putting out knows how to interpret them in a way that is coherent for that communication. If you don't know how to interpret a smell, if I'm completely anosmic and you're a spray bomb walking, killing canaries all around, then for me, that means nothing.
Right.
It's just the same as you're trying to declare to me in a language I don't understand. I'm looking at you. I might pick up on the tone of voice. You might hold my hand, look into my eyes, blink fast and try to tell me you love me or whatever. If I don't understand your language, I will probably not react the way you want me to. It's the same with any type of communication. 8 sprays going all the way. Fine. So as any communication goes, it needs 2 parts. The good thing about it is that we do have people around us, and most people know what smell means. Not a big deal. So we have plenty of partners for this conversation if we want to start it. The bad part about it is that we have a lot of partners for this conversation. And if it's a two-way, somebody's going to go, stop it, motherfucker. You're suffocating me. You're taking my air. You're taking my lungs. You're taking my space. You're taking my everything. Stop it. Just stop it. Don't do it. So it's a two-way thing. People are not yet used to a strong reaction to their strong action. And the first reaction to that reaction is to turn to you and say, you're not sophisticated enough. You're, censoring me. You don't understand this fragrance. I paid $400 for these fragrances. I won't let nobody regulate my expenses and my very expensive fragrance. And you don't know it's a Raja, God damn it,
Yeah.
And then you go, I get it. Just not in my space. Doesn't matter how much it costs.
Right.
So the reaction to the reaction is usually aggression, because the intention in the first communication, first action was aggression to begin with.
Yes.
Sometimes I'm not saying this is the case everywhere. I'm not saying I don't overspray. Sometimes I do. But I think we are forgetting how delicate this balance is between expressing yourself and not being an asshole.
Yeah.
It's a very delicate balance, right? And you cannot establish the balance without a partner who's going, okay, too much, too little. Right? I think COVID changed that. Because if most of the times fragrance is supposed to be a means of communication and expressing ourselves, COVID took that away from us.
Yeah.
You're not close enough to people to tell them things with fragrance, to show them how refined a person you are, how edgy, how this or that. Because you're at home and you're forced to either spray for yourself and that's it, or I don't know. So it's been very, very interesting.
Yeah.
And now, because that validation is not there, people turn to their communities for validation. Right? It's a very community-owned community.
Right.
It's a very natural thing to do. And they started posting the fragrance with a gun.
Oh God. Yeah.
This is my SOTD. Yeah.
Yeah. I used to moderate a group where there was a ton of that, where the fragrance would be juxtaposed with a firearm. I'm not here to discuss my views on firearms, but the cognitive dissonance is blinding to me. It doesn't register as something that makes sense to me, other than, I guess, what young kids say, it's a flex. It's sort of like an assertion.
But that goes back to muscle power. Flex means muscle power. It doesn't mean a brain breakthrough. It's always about power. Or most times it's about power.
Yeah.
So it's been very, very interesting. These communities, like you're saying, you're moderating one in which the members of the community were doing a lot of this.
Yeah.
Now it strikes me as a mismatch. And these mismatches came out more and more in the pandemic because people were forced to polarize. There were so many life-threatening things around us, or space-threatening things around us, that we consciously and subconsciously, we started separating. Somebody says, is it about power or is it about insecurity? Says Light of Joy 1. I think this is a brilliant question, but I think the answer is very simple, because I think insecurity comes from lack of power. Everything we do goes back to reporting against the same denominator, and that is power.
Can I on that, Dana?
Sure.
So with power stems from fear of having no control. So asserting one's power.
Because control is power.
Control is power. Control gives somebody power. So if somebody feels they don't have control, and this is not to, I don't want to paint everyone who does this in a broad brush, but a lot of folks who look to assert that feel a sense of loss in power or control in their lives. So a way to sort of take themselves out of that is to externalize it. It's externalized. You know, that could be from trauma and the fear that comes from
Absolutely.
trauma.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Why it happens is a completely different conversation, because we're just trying to assess what happens at this point.
We don't want to.
Everything happened so in such layered series of actions that is very, very hard to get into why. We can opinate based on personal experience. And I think anything bad comes from trauma, because that's just kind of how we propagate shit in this world. It's kind of how it is. Julia Galkina says, that's true, but COVID at the same time prompted this interest in heavy hitters. So many more people join frag communities to hopefully educate themselves. I think that's correct, but I would split this affirmation in two. I think some of the people that are interested in heavy hitters comes from two directions. One, people don't smell as much, either because of anosmia or because they're masked all the time. So they're like, well, I want to be able to smell what I'm wearing, right? Or I want others to be able to smell what I'm wearing. And whereas in the past I would wear something more safe, now I want something stronger so people can smell me through the mask.
Yeah.
Also, there's that, fuck it, it's the end of the world. Why hold back? Why not finally go for it? You know, I've been trying to be discreet, particularly women. They've been taught to be discreet, to be quiet, to be this, to be that, right? Part of what we wear and how small everything has to be, or how delicate, or how unassuming, you know, when in doubt, take one thing off. No, fuck minimalism, you know? Women are like, no, I don't care if you think I'm a hooker because of what I smell like. I'm going to wear what I like, finally. I think there's that, you know, survival or survivor instinct of kind of saying it, fuck it. And I think the heavy hitters interests or renewed interest or grown interest does come from that. She also says that more people join frag communities to hopefully educate themselves. I think you're right. From what I'm able to observe, I'm part of a lot of groups myself, and I mediate a few groups myself. So I see interest in how things work. Unfortunately, there's nothing to satisfy that kind of interest, and I'll tell you why. But people have more time. People are at home. They're finally sick and tired of the top 10 lists. Top 10 fragrances to wear when you're diarrheaing, you know, like fragrances to wear when you don't know what to wear.
Top 10 fragrances for when you're spending far too much time on the toilet.
Something, whatever. There's so many different top 10s.
Yes.
And in 2 years, a lot of content producers, that's all they did before, and that's all they know how to do well now. They're aggregators of ideas. There is power to that, but people are not into it anymore because they're done, and they need something to feel like they're making it count.
Yeah.
One of the reactions in this pandemic, and I was looking at data, consumer behavior data for luxury products. It's interesting how they interact with content, because whereas in the past they would parkour a whole 40-minute video with top 10 whatever, but they would skip it. You know, they would go first minute and second minute, they'll go 13 minutes in, they'll go 7 minutes in, or whatever, and watch in bits. Now they click, they see the list, and they're out.
Yeah. They don't even want to hear
They don't, because it's irrelevant. Whereas they're starting to go back to written materials now because they feel they're investing in themselves. They feel there's something that has to come out of this. It's a theory of analysts looking at these things, but That's the overall opinion, that people are starting to try to make it count. I'm stuck at home. I've been stuck for a year. I'm going to be stuck at home, not being able to do everything I like for another year. I'm going to start learning Arabic. I'm going to start learning how to make bread. Everybody's making bread, nowadays. I'm going to invest in myself, make it count. I'm suffering, I'm burned out, the world is going to shit. I want to know how to play the flute before I die, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So no one is doing top 10 perfumes for coroners.
Morticians.
Somebody will now that you said
I can
it.
think of a few fragrances that would be appropriate in theory.
Carl T247 says, fragrance is visceral, and loving this discussion, getting straight to the heart of it. We all use fragrance as a kind of weapon signal. So thank you, Carl. Thank you. We still have some time. Oh my God, half an hour is already gone. Dang.
I know. On my end, Dana, I just want to check in a little bit on some folks checking.
Hi, Joe.
Joe sent me hello.
Hi.
My friend Joe. Time to musk up to Rudy. Hello. Sally. Hello. Edward. Hannah. We got a lot of good folks on my end. My good friend Gina, that we went to high school with, has joined
the
us.
Underground Fragrance Queen. Wait, this part I saw. Thank you.
The bottle to the cheek. Yes.
No, it's the duck lips ain't marketing hashtag.
Oh, I love your twist on it. I love that. It's very geometric. It's very symmetrical. Love it.
Emma says, I've made bread in the beginning as well. Yeah, because we're trying to make it count. So people are trying to learn more, going back to learning more about fragrances. Now, I see a lot of people. I'm sorry, I cut you short.
No. I was just going to say quickly, my being a debutante to the fragrance community was a result of the pandemic, because I was anonymous. I came out of nowhere. People were like, where did you come from? So that was because of the pandemic. So here I am.
Well, let's be fair now. People like you, people like me, and there are many people like us. We're contextualizers, right? You sit on something and read as much as you can for years. Yeah. When you come out, you don't come out of nowhere. You come out of somebody else's nowhere. They don't have context of you. That doesn't mean you are not set in your space. You've already conquered your space. Does that make sense?
It does.
Plus, we're not doing this in our teens or our 20s. We're not going with the flow. Let's see what the fad is, and I'm going to do S&M 10 top 10 list after I don't even know how to spell S&M, right? Or BDSM or whatever. So, do you like how I'm dropping like all these acronyms? Love it. But I'm saying we're not coming out of nowhere. Going back to learning. Unfortunately, one of the most brilliant part about all of this is that none of us know shit about anything. Nobody knows, not because we don't. Nobody knows how smell works. We kind of have a vague idea. Do you know how smell works? How smell really mechanically works? No, nobody really does. All we know is that we have fragrant molecules, and we do not know why they're fragrant or why they smell a certain way, because in nature, not everything that smells has sense or has a point in smelling. Mm-hmm. And they each look a different way, right? Imagine it's looking like a key or like a something puzzle piece. In our noses, most of us have about 400 receptors, which is not that much.
Not that much compared to a lot of other animals that have.
But it's not that little.
No, yeah, it's true.
I know Luca Dream has this idea. I'm verbalizing it right now. He still doesn't know. As he says himself, we don't really understand everything about smell. It's the one sense that we haven't broken down into smaller pieces as far as we did with others. Considering the smell is the first and only one that's completely developed in the womb, not even touch is developed in the womb. Smell is, It's very flabbergasted that we don't know how it works. But we have 400 receptors in our noses. That we kind of know. Most of us do. It doesn't really vary with age or race, ethnicity, whatever, anything. So 400 holes, if you want, in our noses. Each of them is kind of specialized in perceiving a specific kind of smell. In other words, theoretically, each hole only takes one or two keys. But the holes change with cycles in the ear, with cycles in our cells, periods, losing weight, COVID. You know, if you play soccer and you break your bone plate, that may affect things. If you pull cocaine and whatever, you can modify the shape and physiology of those receptors, right? So theoretically, you need the right key to fit in the right hole at the right time, because the hole is almost rotating and you have to wait until it opens, you know, because otherwise it kind of locks. That's how we know things work. But out of the 400 nose receptors, to this day, very, very, very few have been determined to be associated with certain kinds of smell. In other words, we don't know which smells are being processed by which receptors. Therefore, we cannot validate or invalidate anybody's smell experience, right? I cannot tell you, with a very few exceptions, which are important, and I'm going to mention them right away, I cannot tell you that you're not smelling something. I can process your visual input and understand what you see and address that through very special mechanisms and cyborg shit. But when it comes to smell, we cannot do that. We cannot invalidate somebody else's experience, which is very interesting. The few exceptions that I want to mention, one of them came out in some reports I read like a few days ago. It's not even that old. There's a institute associated with the University of Pennsylvania. I think it's called like Monell Chemical Smell Center or Chemical Senses Center, something like that. Studies the effect of specific chemical compounds on the human biology, and not only. And they managed to demonstrate that there are certain receptors that react to musky and body odor smells. Now, we know that we do, because every mammal does, right? And not only, even fish do. Fish in water emit smells. It's mind-blowing. But we determined, or they determined, that there are genetic modifications in people across ethnicities, across ages, across cultures, or how we talk about smell, that make it so that some people don't smell certain molecules associated with the musk smell.
Yeah.
Now, you say, yeah.
No, because I know that for a lot of perfumers, the purpose of combining a number of different musks is so that they can maximize the amount of individuals who can detect those musks versus others. They will do like this whole like melange of them, so with the hopes that they have as many people being able to detect them. Yeah.
I say yeah because I know you know this.
Yeah.
It's expected that you know that. Most people don't. Yeah. And most people think you're broken when you tell them, this is really sticky, it smells like ass. No, not like ass, like crotch, which is different. Crotch after festival, that is some good shit right there. You know?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. And they look at you and they go, I smell something very clean. And I'm like, oh, good for you. Now, we keep talking about the intention of the wearer, right?
Yeah.
We're talking about what people want to do when they spray, overspray, whatever. I think we should also talk about the intention of the fragrance maker.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think it's important and I don't know.
No, I know what you're getting at, because I think in terms of like when I analyze a fragrance, and not everybody in the fragrance community is analyzing a fragrance, but when I take it in and I think about like what were the intentions of the perfumer, what do we do as the wearer to appreciate that or defy it? Like we have a right to do whatever we want with the product that we have in our possession.
See, this is where the perfumer goes, wrong. I make art. If you don't understand it, it's because you don't understand it. It's the same as those chefs who put a foam in front of you and expect you to fill up on that.
Yeah.
No. Give me the salt, you know? And they don't.
Yeah.
So that's why I think it's very important to talk about the intention of the perfumer, because it shows later on in what they do to propose that fragrance to the masses, right? Mm-hmm. Who you associate with tells things about you. This is one of the things that I had mentioned many times, and nobody wants to post this because it's so if you send your whole line of bottles to somebody who makes a 14-minute video, doesn't understand shit about your concept, high-end, luxury, good quality, interesting work concept, and they accumulate a total of, I don't know, 400 views by dolling themselves up. So not even reach is achieved, right? And then you come to me after I bought your bottle and you're trying to collaborate.
Yeah.
We can send you and I'm like, no, I bought your bottle. Thank you very much. It's a beautiful line. I'm not going to talk about it because if that person did, I have no room there. That is not my order. Going back to what is your order, right? I said no to many collaborations with many famous people, like people like you, like all the big reviewers and whatever.
People like me, I'm not that big.
You know what I mean? Like other reviewers.
No, I know what you mean.
I said no. I thought they're fun as people, but their approach and their viewers, and they were not my order. I don't play that game. I will not enter a game in which I am set to lose because I'm not playing by your rules.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly how I operate as well. Like you're definitely preaching to the choir. Like, what am I going to add to this discussion if it's already full saturation? You know, people often ask me, you know, why don't you dip into the waters of influencing and getting partnerships and sponsorship? It's just not the nature of what I do. I feel like I would be restrained by expectations that I know that I wouldn't necessarily be able to meet because there are expectations.
I don't know. I think it's a give and take. I think as long as there's transparency and everybody knows what they're getting themselves into, everybody is free to say whatever they want, and everybody is free to listen to and believe whatever they want.
Oh, right.
I don't mind if I know some brand sent you something. Yeah. As long as I trust you to provide an authentic, and people would argue that that's not authentic anymore since you received a gift. That is also true, but we also live in so many different dimensions that's inevitable, right?
Right.
Now, if I follow you, your activity, your track, I know your history, I know your choices in the past, and they kind of meet my choices or what I would do in those situations, perfumery or no perfumery, then I have built a profile of you that in my head is authentic, which means I will develop trust for you. Trust is a very finicky thing. And now that we've all been online for so long and a major thing happened to the world, we have even more data points to evaluate somebody's online profile, right? Because I don't know you personally. I may never meet you personally, but I know you online and I know what you produce. I also know what you stand for. I don't know if you know, but for a while, and this was one of the things that I recommended for fragrance makers. I was interviewed by the people in Milan, Essence, and we just did an interview like a couple of months ago. And this is one of the things I was telling them. Trust is a very finicky thing and is based on authenticity. Authenticity comes through repetition of goals. People need to see that what you think is the same as what you say, it's the same as what you do consistently over a period of time, right? So I was telling her then that positive relationships are a thing. Good judgment and expertise, of course, knowing what you're talking about is another thing, and consistency is another. The last bit of pillar of trust. Now, if a fragrance has sponsored a racist motherfucker in the past, or they're dropping bombs left and right, inappropriate, classist, racist comments left and right, and all of a sudden they come out with a Black Lives Matter hashtag, you're not going to trust them. You're not. If you know somebody's intensely homophobic, right? But then they do something, they put a pride, whatever, rainbow in their background. Right after somebody called them out, you know something's up there. You're not, you know, if the world is literally dying and you come out like a fairy and you go, hi guys, I just thought about because I know mental health is so important nowadays. And I also wanted to show you like what I bought. And should I wear this purse or this purse? You're like, no, thank you. Read the room, sis. It's just like it doesn't, you know.
Right. Reading
me,
the room.
A photo with a gun next to a fragrance in today's day and age, with the way things went in the past 2 years, and the collective craziness that was, you know, nurtured by all of us because you can't avoid it. That kind of makes more sense than somebody who's asking about purses while she's in isolation. Do you know what I'm saying? Like there's on one side you have aggressive but survivalist behavior, which is in tune with what's happening in the world.
Right.
And I'm thinking about it through their perspective. I am off guns. I mean, like that's a different conversation. But from their perspective, that makes sense. Just like it is, just like it does to buy a lot of water, to, you know, buy a lot of toilet paper, whatever. You know what I mean?
I do remember that first year, that when a lot of folks really did shift their tone, I was always sort of thrown off where people were still on that sort of like that hedonistic sort of treadmill. They were still sort of having a difficult time with their attachment of that. And it just sounded so strange that they were so...
I think I know what it is. This is one of the very long conversations I'm having with my partner because I can't take any more quantum physics. I'm like done with finding lectures and quarks and parallel universes. Done. That's his venue in COVID. One of the things I was talking to him about was this continuum we're all situating ourselves on between all substance and all form, right? There are people who are very keen on being deep and all substance, and they don't care about social media. They don't even have Facebook, and they're so against it that they don't even talk about how cool they are for not having Facebook, because there's also a category of people like that, right? They're like very principial. They only say what they mean. They never lie. They never do this. They're the annoying principial people who sit in their seat on an airplane, refusing to give it up for a family to sit together because that's their seat. You know, it's like everything has to be correct. At the other end, so they're all about form, the fun. They're all about the deepness of things, the whys, the whats. At the other end of the spectrum, the people who make their persona and who they are, not out of their principles, but how they are, how they say, they're the form people. They're the people who care a lot about appearances, who keep everything image perfect and so on and so forth. Everybody's on one point on this conundrum. Just like everybody's at one point between principle and profit, right? Principle on one end and profit, pure principle and pure profit. We're all situating ourselves somewhere.
Somewhere on that spectrum, yeah.
You know, you have a principle philosopher dying in a barrel, completely destitute, or artists, you know, who would never sell their stuff and never sell themselves. I will never do ads as an actor because I'm so principled. And then you have people who sell their mothers. They take every and each opportunity. They create opportunity when there's none, and so on and so forth, for profit. Forgetting, or the fact, actually not forgetting. I just started in Romanian. Not forgetting, but kind of ignoring or second prioritizing their principles because they're interested in profit. We're all somewhere on this line, and I think we need to give this perfumers as well and brands as well, because they have to have some profit. That's why when they say, I'm an artist, I'm just an artist, I'm like, fuck no, no, you're not. If you were, you wouldn't be selling. You wouldn't calculate how much you need to sell something for in order for it to make sense to you.
Yeah.
Right? Because if you go, this perfume is my baby. I love my baby. Like, well, you don't sell your baby.
Yes. So what? Yeah. So once you've let go,
it's a product.
It is a product. Exactly. Yes.
It's a product.
Yeah.
And it is, just like in communication, prone to reactions and feedback from the people who are using it as a product. Okay? And I think this Tammy Loves Fragrances says, mind programs are formed from birth and people need to delete the programs. I don't think deletion is an option available for many. I don't even know what it would entail, but I don't think it's an option available for many. Modifying the programs, I think, editing is a more realistic expectation. But there are people and schools of thought that say that mind programs are instilled before birth. And that's why we're talking about transgenerational things. That's why we talk about collective memory and so on and so forth. Sana, so smart. Thank you. My big, fat, juicy, wet brain is my biggest, best feature. Thank you, darling. I had a comment that I want to read on here because I thought it's interesting. Andy Panayotu says, someone can make a painting. No, he was talking about phantom smells. He says, I get phantom smells and I assume others do too, either because it's a neuron misfire or whatnot. It's possible. It's definitely possible. We know that the smell travels straight to the limbic system, amygdala, and hippocampus. Memory, we've talked about this before.
Yeah.
Or at least I have.
I have conversations about it often as well. I tell people that out of all of our senses, there is a direct highway from the nose to the brain. Yeah.
Right. But the other good part is that part of the brain that processes the smell is like this entangled with the one that processes emotion.
Yeah.
So if you feel an emotion that triggers some sort of subconscious memory, you might get a ghost smell. Think that you're smelling that smell. So it works in reverse as well. It's what they use to retrace neural paths for people with Alzheimer's and other degenerative diseases. They're literally using this mechanism of triggering the memory through what you felt and with the smell associated with it, assuming they know what that is. So then as it goes in, it also can come out. Very interesting.
Yeah. And it's also something to really keep in mind and to appreciate when honoring another individual's relationship with fragrance, whether it is a specific one or with fragrance in general. I mean, there are people who are hardwired in a certain way where a lot of fragrance is just too much for them sensory-wise. And that's not, it doesn't necessarily mean that there's anything wrong with them. They're just wired a certain way. We discuss, neurodivergence. Neurodivergence also includes respecting and honoring how people are wired differently. So that's why I take caution when sharing fragrance, with the understanding that everybody has their own relationship and perception of it. And it's not always a positive, but like take my partner, Dana. I told you my partner isn't a huge fan of scent, so I honor that he's sort of wired a little bit differently in how he responds to it. But yeah, it's really important to understand that people have a journey with their senses. You know, their experience is what shapes how they perceive the world. So yeah.
There's so many layers to this, because I have started talking about the intention of the perfumer. Do you guys hear me with really, really annoying echo still?
I hear it from the Instagram fine is A-okay. I heard a few beeps and then they were gone, and you sound fine.
Okay. I'm hearing beeps right now for some odd reason. I was talking about the intention of the perfumer. Let me try to change something, because it's really. Where are you, my friend who gave me the other idea? I'm gonna try another thing. Okay. Webcam, audio, stay with me, folks. Stay with me. The echo only occurs when Joseph is talking.
Oh, now I'm pegged. Tammy, so if you're watching on Instagram, let me know if this is from the Instagram end. For those who are tuned in on Instagram, do they hear an echo?
Do they hear an echo?
I hear an echo.
So, okay. Somebody's telling me in Romanian that it's not good motion. And how about now? Are you still read?
I have confirmation there is no echo on Instagram.
Okay. How about now, Narcisa? Help me out, please. I switched to a different. Oh, that's even worse. All right. How about now? No? Yes? No? What if I put this into here? Hello? Nope. I'm sorry. It's just an experiment, guys.
Okay, can somebody hear me? I actually wasn't saying anything. They can't hear me. Can folks hear me?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Hello? How about now?
So folks on Instagram are now not able to hear me, but you can hear me because we have two different streams going.
I can hear you on Instagram, actually.
Oh, that's very interesting.
All right. How about my folks? Narcisa, talk to me, baby girl. I'm hoping everybody's hearing this. Hello?
Hello?
I can now. You were muted before. I can hear you. And I know. Okay. Everything is closed.
I hear you. They can hear me on Instagram. Okay.
Okay. How about now?
Yes.
How about now? How about now? Dana fixed it. Okay. So I stuck, for anybody who's dealing with this, with the transmission on both social media, YouTube, whatever, Facebook, and Instagram, I stuck these into my microphone. It's like it's like one of those, the omega snakes. All right. So everybody can hear it, right?
Sorry, Dennis. So here's the verdict. At the moment, people can your sound is fine on Instagram. I'm okay, but they hear a little bit of distortion or fuzziness when I speak.
When you speak.
When I speak, but it's not to the point where it's bad, I guess.
And
Okay.
and it wasn't related to me doing anything because we were fine for a while.
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna try to continue this way.
Yes. We're on our second hour.
Wow, geez. Okay, we were talking about what? We were talking about the intention of the perfumer. We were talking about profit versus principle, and what else? We were saying that they also need to be ready for the crystal clear on YouTube, JJ. So YouTube loves you. It's been like the whole time. Sorry. Um, Fernando says, okay, we're finally fine. And I lost my train of thought. And my train is my train. We were talking about the how many layers there are to measuring somebody's relationship with scent, because we have the physicality of being able to smell the scent, right? Like we were saying earlier, receptors, molecules, bam bam bam. That's the nose. The brain might not be able to process it, even though the receptors are there, the molecules are there, everything is there. The brain might not be able to process it. What do? You know, you might only have a partial processing power for that. Then you might be able to have, if you're lucky, you have context to put that in. Somebody's might tell you when you're smelling the smell for the first time. They might tell you, ah, that is jasmine. That is whatever. So then you memorize it, or something's happening around you, so you memorize that smell according to the context around it. You created a memory out of the smell. You put it in a bucket, right, in your brain. Then you attach meaning to it if there is any meaning to be attached. That's a happy smell. That's a whatever. It means that I've made it. This smell that costs $400 a bottle, actually, it costs $35 to make a bottle of shiny things that is being, I'm not going to tell the name, but you know who I mean. Somebody very sparkly. It's about $35 to make one of those bottles, or so the people in the industry say. I don't know. But the fact that you can afford to purchase it for $450, for $600, for $800, whatever a bottle, means you've made it. You've proven yourself to yourself, and now you want to say it to others, right? But there's a meaning to it. And then there are ways to say it out, to project it out, because people might be in COVID and they're not around you to ask, hey, what do you smell like? Oh, I smell like Raja. I paid this much for it, right? I smell like, this is Clive Christian. You don't know what it is. I can write it down for you. It's $850 a bottle, or whatever it is. But if you don't have that, you have to find the means to say it. So that means you go online, you go on forums, you smack your dick on the table with a picture that also has an expensive pair of shoes.
Yes.
Next
Or
to
a
the
watch. Like a watch.
Or a watch.
Yes.
So you need the means to say it. Then you have feedback based on which you create a persona context, not for the fragrance, but for yourself. As a fragrance wearer, as an expert, as whatever. And then, if you're lucky, you get in touch with the perfumer who comes and comments on your Instagram page, and now you have a relationship between you. I have feedback again. I don't know what to do, guys.
I don't hear it at all on the IGN. Yeah, that stinks.
Okay, I'm gonna try. I don't even know what to try anymore, to be honest. This is so destructive because my trains of thoughts are really like freight trains. It takes a long time to get them off, and then inertia is like, so now you have political things attached to the fragrance experience, right? Because if you develop a relationship with the perfumer, you all of a sudden start caring about them. You take ownership of them as well, right? So you have this very vicious, actually, circle, because once you're in it and you're very tightly connected to one of the elements in it, then then you're kind of staying in that circle. It's kind of hard to come out of that circle. And once you're in the circle, that's an order. You start looking for other people who are surge off fans. You start looking for other people who post with their watches. And to validate that point, those people start posting like outfit of the day as being a curated experience that includes scent, which is actually a cool idea, I think. But the way it's been introduced and the way it's being used by other people in the same order take these things to an extreme that has nothing to do with the fragrance itself anymore. Does that make sense? So the communication circle is so grand and so odd and so far away from the intention of the perfumer sometimes that you, as another fragrance consumer, look at all of that and you're like, what? How do I process this? How do I understand this? When I know you, I know the fragrance and I know the perfumer, and the line between the three of you makes no sense. How do I get to accept that order? How do I talk to it within it and bring it back to myself? It's like very hard. Carl says, can you be objective when it comes to a scent?
No.
Like I was saying earlier, even the act of smelling, what you smell is an experience that's entirely designed by nature to you. And the more layers you add to it that are interpretable, the further you get from objective.
I think the only thing that you can do is describe the nature of a scent, but not necessarily your perception of it is never going to be an objective thing. Like you can put certain smells into categories based on some, characteristics, but you can't really, objectively say what one of those is a more favorable smell than another. I mean, think of people who enjoy the smell of gasoline, and then there are people who are like, how in the world can you enjoy gasoline, the smell of gasoline? That's why when people review a fragrance, there's a difference between making your own observation and your own perception of it and then imparting that onto others as if this is just a fact. Like I've read this a lot where there's a fragrance and they don't receive it well. So therefore it must be, this is the equation, therefore it must be bad, a joke, a mess, garbage. But that is all just subjective. It's just all based on your perception of it. So it's
right.
Impossible.
Right. But given that this is the same for everybody. Everybody can read a book, same book. Let's say the book is written in English, because I think translation and interpretation impart a different filter and flavor. Adaptation to another language involves adaptation to another culture. So you can't say that you can read it the way it was meant. But let's say that a book is written today in English for English readers who all read it in English. Everybody's going to get something else from it. Still, the fact that everybody's subjective doesn't mean nobody should try to be more objective, So I do believe there's a role for those who accumulate all these subjective notes and try to curate them in a conclusion that then can be used as a baseline for everybody who really doesn't get it. People do need some sort of direction, I feel. I do too. I have my own beacons to look at. Does that mean they're better than me? No, it just means that for me, they fulfill that kind of function, right? As we do for our best friends. We each have different friends who are good at different things. If you need a slap in the face and some hard love, you go to this friend who will always tell you the truth and, wake the fuck up. What's wrong with you? You suck. We also have friends who pamper us and take us, and they're in our corner no matter what, even when we fuck up, And sometimes we need that small, soft handling, and that's when we go to them. It's the same thing. We all need beacons. And I think in perfumery and perfume analysis, the best we can do by people who come to us for direction is to literally just aggregate everything we hear around us, because we do hear more than others, we do read more than others, we talk firsthand with more perfumers and reviewers than people who watch us, for example, and aggregate those impressions in a way that does not necessarily put our filter on it. You know, if we have it, then that's fine, but it should be part of the data we're aggregating, not using the other opinions to validate our own, which we then package and present as the only one. You know what I'm saying? There's a difference. Again, we're going back to intention. What is the intention between all these bits of communication? We are part of the end of the circle where we got everything. We figured out, we think we figured out shit. And now we're trying to put it out to others in order to contribute to our order. You and I are part of our order, want it or not, right? We are. So we're also Western and white. So you know what I mean? Like there's also that. We're not that diverse between the two of us. Okay, I'm an immigrant. I may have some other kinds of blood in me, but you know, still I present as white. And I'm in America. And I'm part of the 1%. So it's a different, we have to be aware of that. But what I've noticed is across people who follow me, people who are not perfumers or reviewers, because I have a lot of those. Most of my people are people who also talk to other people. You know, we're beaconing each other. But whoever is not that kind of goes across and come to me because my beaconing is not necessarily about specific fragrances or being the first to review something, to introduce a house, which is something that I know I can't keep up with. I can't. I just can't. There's too much, and I'm very thorough, and you know. But for contextual information that I offer, just like you do, like all these bits that we're discussing today, that I put out in what you know my output, you know my content. So that's my beaconing. I try to explain why certain things they might see, smell, think about fragrances can happen. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's a neutral point for me. I'm trying to not impart too much of myself in this. The funny part about it is that that's my authenticity, and it is for it that I'm being hit with all these otherwise could be very lucrative proposals, right? Which I haven't taken up until now, but it's an interesting thing to think about. We all have a part in it. We're not just mere observers. We're forming opinions. We're forming tastes. People who trust you to be this or that, or just like your hat, and the fact that it's on the side and not straight in the middle, or your sweater, or they like me and whatever. They will try to find other things to like about us, to validate their own opinion. They think they have.
Right.
So that's why I think we have a great responsibility.
We do. Yeah.
I'm getting an echo again.
Oh yeah. No. I just wanted to actually discuss that as I continue to gain traction, and I'm becoming more known, which is an interesting thing in itself. I'm realizing that I have a responsibility what I'm going to project and what I'm going to broadcast, and really being conscientious of what the consequences of whatever
influencing are,
of what comes out of my mouth or what I write. What is the consequence of that? And, you know, it can be so difficult to be diplomatic, but to also see where there is something that needs to be pointed out and to try to resolve it without having it damage my character. It's a really tough thing, you know, because I can't, like, if I make an observation in a community where I feel like it needs to be addressed because it could be potentially harmful or hurtful, that's a really, you know, it's a big responsibility to speak up. And I think a lot of people have a tough time with that. They want to kind of be the Switzerland, like, nah, I don't have anything to say about that. And I find I'm the type of person, I find it hard to be Switzerland, and I want
Well, it goes back to scope, right? What is the intention? It goes back to scope. What is the intention behind your communication? Is it to share?
Yeah.
Is it to please? Is it to validate yourself?
Yeah.
Are you having a shitty day and you just need some extra love from people you don't know? But it's love, doesn't matter. Love is love, right? So, what is the scope behind your communication? Is it because the brand sent you a bottle and you have to create a material because you said you would? Is it, what is the intention behind the communication? The scope is always what defines everything that comes after it, because everything that comes after it kind of has to feed back into the scope. Otherwise, you create cognitive dissonances in yourself, and nobody likes to do that. Why torment yourself, right? You don't do it. We don't do it as humans. So that's why I was saying that whoever likes you will find ways to like everything else about you or what you do and what you say, because they need to validate their own opinion. Is a classical thing in psychology. We all do it. We justify things, just like we learn to like something that's $400 because we need to like it in order to justify the purchase. But the purchase was driven by something else. So
go ahead with your after your point there. I want to touch on that, but go ahead.
No, I'm saying I'm saying the scope is very important. Is the most important thing. It's what drives the nature of certain groups, because the scope is created in collaboration with who ends up being founder, moderator, whatever, and then everything else that is being accepted or denied onto that group feeds into the scope, right? And COVID crystallized a lot of things. That's great. But it also revealed the scope of some entities, be them people, brands, groups, communities, and so on and so forth, because it now becomes very clear what the scope initially was. Is everything extra, everything volunteered, everything that other people contributed kind of went away. People were burned out like I was. I didn't produce much because the world's burning. I'm not going to put on makeup just to talk about my newest purchase. It's ridiculous. It's like,
put that on the back burner.
And to be honest, people who follow me didn't give a shit, that I didn't, because they understood why I didn't, because they were going through it themselves. That's what it means to be authentic. You usually attract people like yourself, and authenticity is different for different people, right? But scope is everything. It's what I think created the need for a more clarified and stratified community at large, industry at large. It takes us into directions where people stop caring about prestige as much and start wanting to see something else from a brand. There's so many expensive brands nowadays. To be expensive is not special anymore. Right. It's just more expensive and more expensive. And as people get more and more rich, I live in the Bay Area.
Yeah,
you can find a 1-2 bedroom under $1 million nowhere in the Bay Area. It's like $4,000 for a studio per month to rent. Everybody. No, I do not speak Russian. I understand some things, but I speak Romanian, Italian, Spanish, French, can translate some Portuguese, some Farsi, and whatever bits and pieces I learned in a few others. That's what I speak. Sometimes I speak neither. It's when I drink. I involve my hands a lot. What was I saying?
Oh God.
I was saying,
I was just so entranced by the fact that you were so multilingual. I was like,
but what was I saying before that? What was I saying?
Oh God. Somebody help us out. I was following to him, and then I was like, holy crap, Farsi? And I was just like, my mind was just woo. God, well, we're talking about the pandemic, and we're talking about, I was going to touch on
the stratification. Thank you. The polarization. People started being polarized.
Right.
And expensive is not special anymore. So people want more.
Yeah.
Thank you. Perception of what? Okay. People want more. Yes. So what if it's what if it's $800 a bottle? Sure. There's so many rich people around too.
Yeah.
As we globalize the market.
Oh, go ahead. I had a discussion with a good friend of mine the other night. about, we started the conversation, I mentioned conspicuous consumption, and how, in all honesty, when you're looking at a consumer product, so you think of it like there's the American economist Thorstein Veblen. I studied economics in undergrad, and somehow some of the stuff actually stuck. But there's a concept of a Veblen good. So with a Veblen good, that is something where it far exceeds utility and purpose. The price far exceeds that. And there's a point where there's diminishing returns.
Yep.
So how expensive is something going to be until it is absolutely superfluous and it only serves as a means of outlandishly showing the ability to afford it?
Yeah, but that's a purpose in and of itself. That's what I would venture to remark.
Yeah.
To prove that you can is a purpose in and of itself. And as long as that is a good to be purchased,
yeah.
Honestly, in my opinion, after having observed so much, it really doesn't matter that something is bought for its purpose or for a secondary purpose, which happens to be more important for the person who buys it. If it makes me feel good, who the fuck cares if I like the fragrance or not? It makes me feel good to have it.
Yeah.
Right? Do I wear everything I have? No, I have thousands. Do I wear them all? No. But the purpose is to have them because I know they would go to trash, or to have them because I use them as a reference point when I need to remember something, or to have them because I like the fucking bottle. I like how it feels in my hand.
Right.
You know, so, or I didn't want somebody else to have it because I know there are only 2 left and I know who's after them and I don't like their faces. So I can buy it because I have money, because I worked hard for that. And I buy it because I don't want you to have it. Nah, that doesn't really happen. But you know.
No, I know. No.
It's a point.
Yeah.
So if it makes you feel good to have that Birkin and pay 30,000 for an Hermès bag, is it really that better of a leather? No. Is it that much better of workmanship? No. Any Brazilian will tell you that they have really good leather goods, you know? No, but it's a Birkin and it's 30,000 and it's an Hermès and it makes you feel good to have it. It's a bag like any other bag. You can carry your tampons and your dirty kids, you know, snacks and whatever, toddler snacks. It's a bag, but it makes you feel good to have it. And who's to say that that object has not attained its purpose? Who's to say that in order to feel good, it's more acceptable to go to a spa or take a vacation, but not to purchase something really ridiculously expensive that doesn't make sense if it makes me feel good. Also, people forget something. Most of the world was not able to purchase things for fun in the past. We couldn't. People were poor. People were communist. Half of the world was communist. Ask me how many communist people were in the Communist Socialist Party in India. And, you know, like half of the world was organized in systems of value that did not allow for individual property to exist. For thousands of years, women did not have disposable income. If they produced anything money related, their partner or husband or brother or father became an automatic owner of the usufruct, right? You've studied economy. Maybe somebody touched upon these points. Women have been slaves forever and ever. So now they have money. Now the elders are not forced to go back to taking care of kids, but they can buy shit. They can go on cruises and buy shit for themselves. So we have more disposable income than we've ever had. We can purchase online, and that became a venue for another way of making ourselves feel good. And I think we cannot judge people for being materialistic if those people have never had enough to not be materialistic. Minimalism is a luxury of the rich, just like charity is.
Oh, yeah.
Otherwise, it's called help. You help your neighbor. But if you are into charity, that means you have the luxury to sit back, to have disposable income, and to find it convenient to make yourself feel better through other things. So I don't condemn materialism. I come from socialism, and I understand the recoil, the need to own, because we never have. And if you don't have security of tomorrow, then it's natural to accumulate. It's absolutely natural. But what I don't like, and I condemn, is brands pretending they're historical houses, brands pretending they're top quality this and that, brand owners saying they're master perfumers at that, the most sophisticated nose, and they're not making their own fragrances. Shit like that is false marketing. And I think people are gullible. We don't know better because all these things are protected. So the lack of transparency is what I have an issue with. Major issue with.
I want to be clear. I'm definitely not anti-materialistic. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here right now with over 600 something bottles of fragrance. I grew up poor. I had a scarcity mindset, and now I'm starting to reassess my attachment to materialism, which is a personal thing and not something I should be really prescribing to other people, because everybody has their own relationship to it. So, but I agree with you. I think that using that illusion of prestige, the illusion of luxury, the illusion of what have you, quality, and not really being transparent is the thing that I really take issue with, especially when just from my own perspective, I don't think that somebody, and once again, it's just my own opinion. Much of the time when I have analyzed and experienced a lot of these, there isn't really much of a difference. It's all sort of like smoke and mirrors, really. And I think there's just so much emphasis on it as an object representing something than really actually having the value that it's supposed to have.
And it's the same as investing in the bottle and not what's inside. We know how much it costs to produce a sensual bottle with like a velvet interior and one of those triple boxes that keep it costs a shit ton of money, more than probably the liquid inside.
A big box, and then you open
small box, and then a sleeve, and then but that's because of unboxings, I think.
They've tapped into that.
I think producers are tapping into that. I'm going to need to jump off because my family was supposed to be gone and it's not, and I hear them like squirming upstairs. No. But I think we need a second episode whenever you can fit me in the future, because I would like to talk about what I think has changed in the production system since the online communities kind of took off and then went down with COVID. Like in the past 5 years, I think it's an interesting conversation. What has changed in the sourcing of things, in the production of things, like packaging trends, and how have the consumer behaviors that producers didn't anticipate change how they now make fragrance? I think our obsession with sustainability, which became a very big thing in COVID, is now feeding into how brands, source their ingredients a little bit. I have a few examples. I think the way, the context, like Black Lives Matter, Me Too, has been feeding back into brands understanding that no position is a position about stuff, and some consumers have that need and that expectation of them, and how they adjust their talking and their presentation of their products, and sometimes producing their products to respond to these needs, to newly found or newly verbalized needs from their audiences, and so on and so forth. I think these pressures and the relationship between the feedback of the buyer back into the production process, I think is a very interesting thing to look into. By the way, do you know the biggest, and I'm going to leave you here. Do you know the biggest consumer of fragrance?
The biggest consumer of fragrance, I would guess it would be, I would just, a region, Middle East? Is it the Middle East?
So it's not.
Oh, it's not.
It's not. Per sales and volume, the 5 top buyers, if you want, and we can discuss this next time because I'm curious to see why things are the way they are.
Yeah.
America's number 1.
Okay.
Brazil is number 2.
Ah.
France is number 3.
Mm-hmm.
UK is number 4, which is very surprising to me. And Russia is number 5, exactly. So these are the 5 in 2021. I looked at the data, read some reports. I went on Gartner last night because I wanted to see, some things I keep an eye on. Yeah. So these are the 5 largest buyer of fragrance in 2021. And next time, I would be curious to hear your thoughts on what everybody has to say about why this is the way it is.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Surprises there. I think I might have heard Brazil was a pretty high up there as a consumer, but we have Russia at 5 out of the top 5.
We have never mind Russia. I'm not surprised about Russia. They like their luxury products, and the middle class is in ascension that's like exploding. So there's money and there's interest there, and they have a history in perfume. Okay, we're not going to talk about this now because I gotta go. Yeah. Thank you, everybody who came in. They're here. Everybody's in the same place. Unemployment funds. We will see each other again.
Of course. So we'll get in touch soon. Of course, we're going to be talking pretty soon. And we'll work out sort of a part 2. We'll work it out. We'll make it happen.
I just inserted myself in your series again. Sorry. It's hard to not talk about these things. And there's so many things nobody's talking about.
It's important. This is the whole reason why I started Effluvium. I felt like there needed to be sort of a forum to talk about a lot of different things that I think that some of us may have avoided within the way things are, just like the, business as usual in the fragrance community. Like, here's your forum. Let's air it out. Let's share opinions, be comfortable with that, not to be afraid of dissent, disagreement. Remember that this is healthy. I named it Effluvium because effluvium isn't always necessarily a pleasant thing. So that was my reason for naming it. So yeah, that's what this is all about. And we will do a part 2. And I'm just really happy that you were willing to join me on this. This has been really a pleasure. I'm so glad that I'm getting to know you, and we're sharing ideas and having these conversations. So thank you so much, Dina.
I think you're really good at this. Really, it's hard. It's hard to be a good moderator, and definitely with people like me who can't really be reined in a conversation. I'm sorry, too many things in my head. But I think you're good at this. I think you should. Huh?
Well, I was gonna say it's okay as you don't mind the occasional interruption or interjection. I just say to people like, no, it's fine because like.
I need interruptions to breathe.
You and I are similar in that respect. That's why I was sort of like leaning into it, because like when I go into something, like I'm like a train. So I totally get it. And that's why sometimes like I appreciate being the listener and being the moderator and just letting the conversation just sort of happen on its own. I think that that's really important because this isn't necessarily about me. This is about getting people in the community together to discuss things. So
thank you, my dear. And I will see you next time. I will see you everybody. I will see everybody next time.
And
wherever you go, make it better. Don't forget about that. That's my thing.
Yes.
Make it count.
Next week, I'll be having Adam Forziati. He is a fragrance reviewer. He'll be joining me next week. He's really a pleasure. And we'll wrap it up for now. Thank you so much, Dina.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye, everyone. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.